So, I think that we have still a few moments for questions. And if I may, I would like to actually ask you one question before we turn to the floor. You have been working in this field for some time, and you can give a perspective both from the national level as part of the Brexit conference and from Plenary Reports and from the Commission. Could you tell us a little bit more how you see the Bologna process is now developing? And as you are leaving the Commission soon, you don't actually give an official perspective. I think we're more happy to have a personal, honest perspective on how you see things are developing. So if you could maybe like to tell a little bit more on how you think things are going over the next few years.
I personally certainly can agree with what you said, but also the Commission would agree with most of the points you raised in your response to my presentation. I understand that you may be a bit disappointed with that many relevant aspects that occupy, I say, in higher education are not mentioned or not elaborated on in the communication, but that is because it's such a cooperative endeavor of the entire Directorate General for Education and Culture and the DG Employment. It was extremely difficult because my unit, the higher education unit, was coordinating the whole thing. So, and we had already prepared the green paper last year, which was also, there was a constant, very jealous, we were jealously observed by all other units, school, vocational training, to make sure that we would not give higher education undue prominence in the green paper. And the same thing happened now with Youth on the Move. We carefully had to avoid the impression that we were hijacking Youth on the Move for higher education, and we often had to tune down certain formulations and make sure that all the other aspects regarding vocational education and so on were appropriately represented. So the advantage of Youth on the Move is that it's a concerted approach to the problems that young people are facing. The disadvantage, if it's a disadvantage, is that each field feels a bit unhappy. That the youth people would have wanted more on youth in it, and the vet people more on vet, and more employment. And colleagues were not all too happy because they still think that their aspects aren't really well taken care of. I think you will be happier with next year's communication that we're beginning to prepare now, which will be specifically addressing higher education and all the construction sites that we still have to continue to work on. So wait for 1 year from now. It's a scene for autumn 2011, follow up to the modernization communication. And then regarding Bologna, I think we're entering a difficult phase of Bologna in the sense that it will be less flashy and glossy and easily marketable, what we have to do now than what we've been doing over the last decade, when every 2 years the ministers met and came forth with a new set of new action lines and new initiatives, and every communique outdid the previous communiques in original suggestions and propositions. I think we now all agree that everything is on the table. We have a very full agenda for the years to come. And the problem is, that's why I'm calling it difficult. I think the risk is now that people will find it boring. There are no new exciting initiatives coming out of Bologna, at least not that I'm aware of. It's now about the small print business, getting the diploma supplement up and running, using ECTS in a way that it really works by refraining from national redefinitions or institutional redefinitions of what ECTS should be all about, and so on. So it's work, quite simply. We have to make it work now, and without having the additional kick of new headlines and initiatives coming along all the time. There's, I think, 7 or 8 working groups that have been set up by the Bologna follow-up group on all the open issues. I mentioned the mobility working group, then there's one on recognition, one on lifelong learning. For all the topics, you have a working group that consists of partly of EFUG, the follow-up group members, but also experts from stakeholder organizations, universities, or directors' conferences, the EUA, and so on. What can I say? I'm optimistic that we will get there. I'm not pessimistic, because when you look at the relatively short time span of 11 years since the Bologna process had started, in spite of all the shortcomings and criticism that there is, and often it's justified criticism, I think we've come a long way in being, well, at least we were fully aware of the problems now that European higher education is facing, and people often, the real Bologna opponents say it would be better without the program, it would be better off without the process. I think that's not at all true, in spite of all the deficiencies of Bologna. If Bologna hadn't come around, we would have come up with a different initiative to face the problems that higher education is facing globally, and that we in Europe should tackle in a European way. If it hadn't been the Bologna process, then there would be something else, or if there weren't something else, it would be far worse off. We have to, it would be ridiculous not to cooperate in Europe, within the EU and within the wider Europe, on issues such as mobility, quality assurance, recognition of degrees. It has to be done, whether it's called Bologna or not. It doesn't really matter. We have to reflect on the employability of graduates. That is, for example, something that really has changed from the day when I look back to my days of studying. My university didn't give a damn about what became of us. I was studying a hopeless field such as literature and history, and nobody cared. I mean, you did it at your own risk, and once you had your diploma, the university didn't want to know about what became of you, and that has changed. You have career centers being set up in many universities, and so on. So I'm optimistic in the long run, but I know that we will have to get through a difficult period of boring, down-to-earth work in all the different aspects of higher education reform.
Just 1 or 2 minutes for any questions from the floor, and let's think of the opportunity to have maybe some input for the development of new programs. And if anybody would like to say something in relation to that, and let's remember that Christian is from the European Commission in Brussels, not from the national agency. So if you have any complaints with the national agencies, you have to call them up, I think.
I don't mind.
Okay. I mean, he's tough, he's been in the church, that's great before. Anybody? Is there anybody who would like to share some views or ideas? Or are we just kind of desperate for coffee right now? Good. There's a microphone right here.
Can I just ask? Can you hear me?
Why don't you wait for the microphone first?
Thank you very much. You mentioned very briefly, or you sort of skirted over the whole financial aspect of it at the end. and I can understand why, but the fact of the matter is, the world is going through a very difficult financial period at the moment, and there's, from my perspective anyway, I don't think a lot of I'm not being pessimistic, I'd like to be as optimistic as you are about this, but I think a lot of these things are going to be very difficult to drive forward as successfully unless there is going to be financial help to correct these things. And it is in fact one of the first things that Martin brought up in terms of mobility. How optimistic are you that the Commission can help the community see this program forward?
You're aware of how it works, aren't you? Now we're in the preparatory phase for the next generation of program. So now what it's all about is driving home to member states the ideas, the need for at least as much money as we had, and preferably much more money that needs to go into education and training and mobility and so on. Youth on the Move for the time being doesn't change anything. Not one single euro for the time being is mobilized as a result of Youth on the Move. As I said, the financial framework is set for the next 3 more years. But then it will be a new game altogether, and Youth on the Move is launched now to I wouldn't say brainwash, but to influence gently, to nudge governments into the right direction, and of course we're closely cooperating with the European Parliament on that to make sure that the European Parliament has been in the past very supportive of first of Socrates and then the lifelong learning program, so that because it's a co-decision thing, the Parliament has to agree and give their support, and they're often even more demanding than the Commission in their financial expectations. So from these two sides, the Commission from the one side and the Parliament from the other side, we're trying to prepare the Council, that is the head of government, mentally for what is expected from them. But then what will come out, and I'm sure it will be, there has been a constant increase over the last year, so there will be a substantial increase also this time around. But on the other hand, our needs and expectations are growing all the time. There's always more we want to do and stimulate from the European level. For example, one thing that I would see very critically is your idea, Martin, of investing even more from the EU level into Bologna experts. I think it's not realistic. It's already a huge. I can see that from the receiving end, it might be quite insufficient. For example, seen from your perspective, you lack specialists for your area that can talk to the likes of them in musical conservatories on how to introduce Bologna. That's the only expert these people accept. Mechanical engineers only listen to mechanical engineers and so on. So we need indeed more discipline-specific Bologna experts, but I doubt that it can be funded from the European level. Already the Commission is spending how many million on supporting national teams in all Bologna countries. It's not just the EU. All 47 Bologna countries have their own national teams. The non-EU teams are funded through the campus program, and that's a huge position in the budget already. But I think when it comes to subject-specific experts, we have to think of different solutions. Either the governments have to step in, as they do in some countries, or else do as a network try to get money from the Commission.